Alright, in 7.2a, we are going to look at factoring using GCF, or greatest common factor. That's what GCF stands for. So the greatest common factor of two or more monomials is the largest of the prime factors common to the integers. If two monomials do not share any common prime factors, the GCF is 1 and the polynomial is prime. So that might not make any sense just reading it, but as we go through an example, it'll start to make more sense. So let's look at number 1. Factor each polynomial using GCF. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with each term. I'm going to start with 30x squared. And I'm going to break that up into its prime factors. So if it helps you to break 30 up off to the side so you know what its prime factors are, I suggest making your factor tree first so you know what numbers multiply to give you 30. So we have 2 and 15 would give me 30. 15 would give me, I could do 3 times 5, and those would be my factors for 30. So I'd have 2 times 3 times 5. And if I have x squared, that means I'm going to have 2 x's multiplied together. So now when I break up 12, 2 times 6 gives me 12. 6, I would do 2 times 3. So my greatest common factors of 12 are 2, 2, and 3. And I only have 1x. So notice how I lined these up, my 30x squared factors and my 12x factors. Because now I'm going to circle any common factors that they both have. So I notice they both have a 2, they both have a 3, and they both have an x. So that means my greatest common factor is 2 times 3 times x. So now to get my answer, I'm going to take that 2 times 3 times x. I can multiply that out. That gives me 6x. My greatest common factor is going to come first, 6x. And then I'm going to write all my leftover terms from the 30x squared. So that would be 5 and x. And then I'm going to write all my leftover terms from my 12x, and that would just be 2. And this is my answer. Okay, so let's look at number 2. I need to start by writing out all of my factors. So I've got, let's see, negative 25 ABC. 15, I can multiply 3 and 5, and those are my factors. 3 times 5, I've got 1a and 2 b's. Okay, for negative 25, I've got a negative 1 and 25, and 25 breaks down into 5 and 5. So I've got negative 1 times 5 times 5, and I've only got 1a, 1b, and 1c. So now I've got all my factors written out. I'm going to circle all of the ones in common. So I've got a 5, got an a, and I've got a b. So that makes my GCF 5ab. So that's what's going to go out front, 5ab. And then all my leftovers go inside. So I've got 3b for my first term. And I've got negative 1 times 5 times c, which is negative 5c. And that is my final answer. So in order to check these, if you wanted to check to make sure you were getting the right answer, you could distribute this 5ab into your parentheses, and you should get this same thing. If we do that, we've got 5 times 3 gives us 15. We've got 1a, and we've got b times b is b squared. 5 times negative 5 is minus 25, and a, b, c. And if we look, that's the same thing we started with. So that's how you know that that's your right answer. Okay, let's look at number 3. Now we've got 3 terms instead of 2, but we're going to do the same process. I'm going to write out my factors for each term. Okay, so if I break 18, I can break that into 2 and 9. 9 goes, I get 9 by 3 times 3. So that gives me 2 times 3 times 3. That gives me 18. And I've got 2 x's and I've got 1 y. For 12 we actually just did up here, so I'm going to use that. For 12, I've got 2 times 2 times 3. I've got 1x and I've got 2 y's. And finally, negative 6. I know negative 6 breaks into negative 1 and 6, and in order to get 6, I can multiply 2 times 3. That all gives me negative 6. Then I've got 1x and I've got 1y. Now when I circle these, it has to be common in all 3. It can't just be 2 on my terms. I've got to have a 2, for example, in all 3 of my factors. So I've got a 2 common in all of them, and I've got a 3 common in all of them. Then I've also got an x, and I've got a y. So my greatest common factor in this case is 2 times 3 times x times y, which gives me 6xy. So that's my term that goes out front. And then my leftovers, in my first term I've got 3x. My second term I've got a 2y. And my third term, all I've got is a negative 1. That is my final answer. Okay, let's look at number 4. I've got 7. That would be 1 and 7, so I can't multiply anything else to give me 7. So if I go write my factors of 7, 7x squared, sorry. That would just be 7 times x times x. Then 9, yz, I can break up into 3 times 3 times y times z. Now you notice that we have nothing in common between these two terms. Nothing I can circle. So this one is already prime. I can't break that one down any further. Number 5, I can break 8xy. My 8 breaks down into 2 times 4. 4 breaks into 2 times 2. So I would get 2 times 2 times 2xy. And then negative 12 mn. Negative 12 breaks into negative 1 and 12. 12 breaks into 2 and 6, and 6 breaks into 2 and 3. So I get negative 1 times 2 times 2 times 3, mn. Okay, my common terms here, I've got 1, 2 that matches up, and then I've got another 2 that matches up. And that is it. So my greatest common factor is 2 times 2, which gives me 4. So I've got a 4 on the outside. My first term, I've got a 2xy left over. And my last term, I've got a negative 1 times 3 times mn. So that would be negative 3 mn. And that gives me my final answer. Okay, we've got one more example, number 6. 5xy. Well, 5 I can't break up into anything except 5 and 1, so that's already prime. And I've just got 1x and I've got 1y. Y squared, that breaks up into y times y, 2 y's. So the only thing I have in common in this one is a y. So my greatest common factor is y. So y goes first. Then my leftovers, I've got 5 times x on the inside, and I've got y for my second term. And that gives me my answer.